The United States of America spends more money on educating its students than any other developing country, spending a total of $15,171 on every student, more than any of the other 34 nations covered in the OECD report. However, upon further research into this, the US only spends 3% of its GDP, which places it 134th out of the 135 countries in such a category. Value placed on education in the US varies from state to state. In smaller towns, less value is placed on education and more on self-sustainability. In larger cities, more value is placed on education because it is needed to survive in the corporate world. The USA as a country seems to value education, but politics don't always make it seem that way. The value of teachers also varies depending on region. Teachers are typically underpaid compared to other professions in America. However, they are becoming more accountable for student learning because of the emphasis placed on standardized testing. Education in the USA is free up until high school graduation. Unlike Europe's and other parts of the world, America does not offer further education beyond this point.
Education in America seems to be much more teacher-oriented. Classrooms in the US are set up for testing and individual work rather than group projects and collaborative learning. Compare this to Australia, whereby education has taken a shift towards student-based learning and inquiry-based learning, and there becomes a stark difference in teaching styles. Regardless of NEPLAN, Australia is taking baby steps away from the importance of standardized testing, with its relevance in everyday teaching being phased out. America, on the other hand, frequently tests its student in all areas and records and analyzes the results to forward their learning.
Australia is currently trying to prove itself in the educational community and push itself further up the leaderboard internationally. Through student-based learning, inquiry-based units, further funding and better qualified teachers, Australia is fast becoming a force to be reckoned with in the educational sector. As mentioned, this is something America does not seem to understand, with funding and the importance of education considered at an all-time low. However, that being said, America does have a system where every classroom has both a teacher and an assistant teacher present, allowing for better control of the classroom and more aid to the students. Sometimes simply having one teacher to 20 to 30 students can pose issues in difficult classrooms. By having another body to help with classroom management, you can organise lessons and units with more clarity.
Interaction in the classroom follows a mainstream model. Students listen quietly while the teacher talks, and when they are called on, they respond one at a time by asking or answering questions. To show they are paying attention, they are supposed to sit still and maintain eye contact. Schools in the US appear to follow a very industrialized aspect of education, whereby the teachers run the lessons and the students move through the system, gaining certain skills and knowledge before entering the global world. This system worked well when most of the work outside schools was industrial and manual by nature. However, in an IT-defined world and with collaboration and free thinking on the rise, this model does not seem to fit well with the expected outcomes of education. Alongside this, university is still seen as a prestigious role rather than a right for all, with fees for some courses pushing over $50,000 a term. With little to no government financing/loans and high interest rates on any others, students force themselves into a lifetime of debt for the sake of a good education. Let it not be said that Australia is much better though. However, with a government loan system in place and lower fees with a sliding payback scale, it makes education more accessible to more people.
Unlike Finland, whereby education is seen as a right for all, how or when a child progresses is not of importance. Both America and Australia still rely on formative and standardized testing for its students throughout the years to assess their development. This can mean more students falling behind in terms of development and losing motivation. Typically, there is not much in the way of help for students who fall behind. Both Australia and the US still see education as a leveled institution, whereby students must reach a certain set of goals before progression and recognition of achievement. In Australia, children with special needs are typically included in mainstream education until the point has been reached whereby it has been determined they cannot be sustained in mainstream education. In America, children with special education needs are typically excluded from mainstream education and placed in specialized schools.
Education in Australia is inclusive for everyone. The system focuses on the right of further education for all, whereas compared to the US, this aspect is only shared up until high school graduation, where there is an introduction of high fees, which makes it very difficult to progress any further, and the government help is minimal. While Australia too imposes fees on students for university students, there is government aid available to everyone. The fees are then collected with a sliding scale for paying it back afterwards, depending on what you earn. Again, America has no such system in place and still relies heavily on privatized, and there is no high interest government loans.
US examples of formative assessment include quizzes given periodically through lessons, homework and observations. For summative assessment, they use portfolios, finals and standardized tests such as WestS, a custom-designed assessment for West Virginia students. Assessment in the US all seems to revolve around standardized and leveled exams. Students and teachers are graded on every aspect of their work, and test scores are used to determine their academic level and further their learning strategy. Schools need to meet county requirements in their results to avoid being closed down by the state.
Assessments for both systems have internal and external stakeholders. The government systems provide tests such as NAPLAN in Australia. These tests identify where all students are in regards to literacy and numeracy skills that provide the critical foundations of their learning. The equivalent test in the United States is the WEST test. There are a number of different types of testing that occur in both systems. In both systems, standardized testing seems to be the common feature in classrooms, with examples such as pre-test, maths test, and comprehension tests. Other similarities exist with testing methods including KWL, charts, portfolios, and pre-tests. Australia and United States do differ in some aspects, and it appears in the Australian system they use many forms of assessments as well as the United States when using standardized testing. For example, Australia will use informal observations, brainstorming sessions, anecdotal notes, rubrics, and recorded readings, which we call running records. Further examples of the American system include quizzes given periodically throughout lessons, homework, observations, performance tests, portfolios, finals, and IQ tests.
Some schools have shortened or removed recess in lower grades, while in upper grade levels, fine art programs are being removed in order to make more time for core studies. A school in West Virginia recently had their art program removed, with the school claiming that students do enough artwork in their classrooms, and art was unnecessary. This relates to the standardized testing issue because the schools feel pressure to remove unnecessary programs in order to increase test scores. Bullying is another major issue in the US. Schools nationwide have a zero-tolerance policy, and anti-bullying programs are in place to help with the issue. However, in a recent SAFE survey, teens in grades 6 through 10 are the most likely to be involved in activities related to bullying. About 30% of students in the United States are involved in bullying on a regular basis, either as a victim, bully, or both. These schools' bullying statistics show what a problem bullying is in the United States. The recent school bullying statistics show that cyberbullying is becoming increasingly prevalent on schools' property as well as involving students, even when they're not at school. Because of this growing number of kids affected by bullying, more and more schools throughout the country are cracking down on the measures taken to stop bullying. When it comes to verbal bullying, this type of bullying is the most commonly type, with about 77% of all students being bullied verbally in some way or another. As a result of this fear and anxiety of being bullied, many students are more likely to miss classes or even drop out of school. There is an increasing awareness in Australia about the level and impact of bullying in society. A national survey showed more than 38,000 school children between 7 and 17 established that peers bullied approximately 1 in 6 children each week. The prevention of bullying in Australian schools is now recognized as part of the human rights movement, and it's part of the school's duty of care towards students and staff, and a moral imperative for schools to address bullying and keep children.
During this collaboration with the West Virginia College students, a lot of important information has been gathered. For example, we have discussed different school systems, the culture of the schools, different types of assessments, and different educational systems that both countries are facing. We have learnt that America has some interesting ways to tackle education, such as its approaches to standardized testing and funding of higher education. We have learnt more about the education in Australia, such as its stance on children with special needs and also its stance on higher education. During this assignment, we have learned key values such as working collaboratively, creating an environment of active, involved, exploratory learning, used a team approach to problem solve while maintaining individual accountability, and also encouraged a diversity of understanding and problem solving skills. Thank you.
During this exchange, we have used several ICT technologies including email, Skype, G Drive, G Docs, Webull and Evernote. We would like to say that Evernote has been the biggest aid for us during this task, as it allowed us to share notes, information and files quickly and collaboratively through the internet. Evernote is a web application whereby users can drop files and text notes into notebooks and share them with other people. We set up a notebook early on in the task and have been dropping information and notes to each other throughout the task. The American group were also more than happy to share information through this method, and between us we grouped up a fair amount of notes and slides by simply dropping items into a notebook online.